The Death Company hit the ground with a bone-jarring impact just before the Thunderhawk did. Sending thousands of shards scything through the masked men, the flyer exploded in a ball of fire. The Death Company at the edge of the blast didn't even flinch, revving their chainsaws and aiming their bolt pistols. Then, at some unknown signal, they attacked. Swinging their weapons in wide arcs, they carved a bloody path through the arrayed ranks of cultists. In the background, over the seas of human flesh, armor could be seen, trudging toward and belching smoke. The Death Company took no heed in the impending danger and continued to rip their bloody way through the ranks of the corrupted. Arton gave a spine-chilling howl and ripped his helmet off, gauntlets slick with the blood of chaos. He lunged forward with his chainsword, using the butt of his bolt pistol as a club, and skewed a cultist, gore spraying from the wound. Pulling the chainsword sideways, he ripped the weapon free of the dying cultist, spraying blood across his own face. He swung his chainsword in and off, decapitating a man and severing arms of another. The cultist fell to the floor, wailing, trying to clutch his severed stumps. Arton ended his misery with the sole of his ceramite boot, crushing his head with a spurt of liquidized brain. His tongue looked at his mouth, tasting the blood which had splattered there. He spat it back out in the face of a cultist whose rusted weapon had glanced off his ceramite-covered chest. It was congealed and thick, tasting like corruption. The man clutched his face, the acidic spittle melting his skin and muscle. Arton punched the man in the chest without a second glance, caving in his ribs and snapping his spine. Ripping the still beating heart from his enemy's chest, he held it above his head as a gesture of victory, before dropping it to the ground and searching for another enemy to kill. But before he could acquire a new target, the world disappeared. With an eruption of flame, blinding white, burning the skin of Arton's face, the earth erupted. The tanks had finally drawn into range, and demonic faces crackling with whirling of corruption plating, fired their massive cannons with a belch of oily smoke. Explosions ripped around Arton in bloody shreds as he lay on the ground, blood-stained earth cooling on his face. The helmet of one of his brethren rolled to a stop beside him, staring at Arton with an expression of metallic hatred. The head was still in it. Over the din of the explosions and the wet crump of limbs being ripped from their bodies, he felt footsteps stopping beside him. Ready to lash out, Arton rolled and lifted his chainsword, ready to strike at his foe. But this was no foe. The chaplain stood above him, skull mask giving him a morbid stare, crows and crackling in gore. The chaplain held out his free hand and Arton took it, heaving himself to his feet. The chaplain nodded as if he was about to speak, but a bloody hole appeared in his helm and he slumped to the ground, his life inking on the forsaken earth. At this, Arton lost himself in the black rage. A red mist descended upon him, and he let out a howl more akin to that of a space wolf. Dropping his chainsword, its motor burned out from the blood it had spilled. The Blood Angel sprinted towards the lumbering tanks, armored feet pounding the corpse beneath him. He smashed an errant, dazed cultists from his path. The tanks did not care for their comrades, and made a flying leap at the nearest vehicle. His armored body clanged against the hull as he heaved himself onto the top. The hatch clanged open, and a mutated cultist glanced out, eye stalks gazing around a 360-degree view. They caught a glance of a black armored leg before his head was ripped off and cast aside. Pulling a grenade from his waist, he dropped it inside the hatch and slammed it shut. A muffled yelp was heard from inside before the grenade detonated. A muffled explosion pattering on the inside of the hatch with shrapnel and chips of bone. Preempting what would occur next, Arton threw himself off from the tank, crushing a cultist under his weight. The tank exploded from secondary detonations, and fragments of the grenade setting off ammunition and then fuel. Pieces of hull scythed over his head, slicing into those unfortunate not to duck. He threw himself to his feet and took a quick scope of the battlefield. What wasn't obscured by rolling clouds of smoke. He could not sight any of his brethren, other than the black armored corpses in the dirt. The adrenaline in his system was ebbing, the pain of his previously unnoticed wounds now starting to make themselves felt. Arton looked around again for a weapon. His bolt pistol, long spent, had been cast aside before his broken chainsword. Blood and dirt streaked his face now, mirroring the surface of his armor. Now, feeling close to his time of death, Arton's thoughts went back to the time before he was gripped in the throes of the Black Rage. Before this.